Well, good morning. This is the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson, and we're standing on the edge of something historic. James Comey, remember him? He's a former FBI director, the man who once sat at the top of America's most powerful law enforcement agency. He's been indicted. Two charges. One, making false statements to Congress. Lying to Congress is illegal. Now, what's funny is that Congress lies to us all the time, but lying to them is illegal. It is under 18 U.S. Code section 1001. The second count is obstruction of congressional proceedings under section 18 of the U.S. Code, section or paragraph 1505. Now, this isn't rumor as you're waking up this morning. This isn't speculation. This is the Department of Justice itself in the Eastern District of Virginia, bringing the weight of the federal government, the federal grand jury against a man who ran the Bureau of Investigation. And that, my friend, is a moment that requires more than just a hot take. It requires depth. So over the next little bit, we're going to break it down for you. All right, so let's start with the bare facts. Yesterday, the DOJ announced that a federal grand jury had returned a two-count indictment against James Bryan Comey, who was a former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations. One more time. The charges are as follows. Number one, false statement to Congress. Okay. The allegation is that in September of 2020, during sworn testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, James Comey claimed that he had never authorized anyone at the FBI to serve as an anonymous source for the media. Prosecutors say that this is false. They allege that he, in fact, directed or approved of an FBI employee to speak anonymously, shaping press coverage while publicly denying it. Okay. Count two, obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Prosecutors argue that Comey's denial obstructed the Senate's investigation into the Crossfire Hurricane operation and related matters. In plain language, by denying what he had done, he misled Congress and interfered with their ability to get to the truth. Now, these two statutes are not minor technicalities. They are among the most common federal charges brought against officials, lobbyists, and even ordinary citizens when investigators believe that someone lied under oath or tried to throw sand in the gears of Congress. But here's what makes this different. This isn't some staffer. This isn't some mid-level bureaucrat. This is the director of the FBI, the man who famously stood in front of the cameras on July of 2016, walked the nation through Hillary Clinton's email investigation. Remember? The man who faced off with President Trump in 2017, leading to his firing. The man who became a best-selling author, public speaker, and media darling to some, and a villain to others. And now, he's the defendant. Let's break down the first statute, false statements. Under 18 of U.S. Code, paragraph 1001, it is a federal crime to knowingly and willfully make a materially false statement to Congress, the executive branch, or any other branch of the federal government. So, if it's a branch of the federal government, it is a federal crime to lie to them. Now, it doesn't seem to be a crime for them to lie to us because they lie to us all the time. Here are the three key elements. Knowingly. Now, if you just make a mistake, if you don't know, and you just say something off the top of your head and you really don't know, the prosecution must prove that the person knew what they were saying was false. They got to prove that you know what you're saying is false. Forgetfulness, confusion, or misspeaking is not enough. It also has to be willful. It has to be intentional, not an accident, not a slip of the tongue. And it also has to be materially false. The lie must matter. It must have the potential to influence the investigation. So it's got to be a big deal. That is why this is tricky in high-profile cases. Memory can be slippery, wording can be ambiguous. Defense attorneys thrive on saying he didn't knowingly lie. He simply didn't recall, or he misunderstood the question. But prosecutors wouldn't bring the charge if they didn't think they had something stronger. There must have been documents and emails and testimonies from that particular FBI employee. Something that shows Comey did indeed authorize an anonymous source and that he then denied it with intent. All right, we're going to go right into the next one. Let's look at the second statute, obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Section 18 of the U.S. Code, paragraph 1505, makes it a crime to obstruct the, quote, due and proper exercise of the power of inquiry under which any inquiry or investigation is being had by either the House or any committee of either house. Okay. So in plain English, if Congress is investigating and you lie or withhold information that materially interferes with that investigation, you could be guilty of obstruction. It's not as heavy as obstruction of justice in a criminal trial. And this is something that people need to know. But it is still a felony. Okay. And Congress has used this statute in big political fights before. Remember Oliver North and Iran-Contra? Remember witnesses during the steroid hearings in baseball? Same deal. For Comey, prosecutors are saying his denial wasn't just a lie. It was actively obstructed the Senate Judiciary Committee's inquiry into the origins of Crossfire Hurricane. By telling them, no, I never authorized anyone to be an anonymous source, he allegedly shut down a line of questioning that could have exposed internal leaks and coordination with the press. Now, let's pause for a second and take all this in. Now, this is not whether you like or dislike James Comey. This is about precedent. Never before in the U.S. history has a sitting or a former FBI director faced criminal indictment. Never. Even when you know there had to be a time where J. Edgar Hoover, in his lace panties and fishnet stockings under his suit pants, was sitting there lying his off to Congress, right? Now, the FBI has had its scandals. Hoover's excesses, Waco, Ruby Ridge, internal corruption cases, but to see the Bureau's top man facing a federal arraignment in Alexandria, Virginia, this is uncharted territory. And the symbolism could not be more explosive. At a time when half the country already think the FBI is weaponized against them, and the other half think that the DOJ is being used as a tool of the Trump's revenge, this indictment dropped like a hammer on both narratives. Comey's defenders will say that this is political persecution. His critics, they'll say it's long overdue accountability. Both sides will yell. Everybody's going to be yelling today. Both sides will spin. You'll be dizzy. But the fact remains on October 9th, James Comey will walk into a federal court as a criminal defendant. Billy Graham famously said he believed the next move of God would be believers making a difference in the marketplace. In the fall of 2019, Anton Kresick moved to Washington, D.C. And as Anton began his career in the political arena, two things became obvious. Godly principles were lacking on both sides of the aisle, and many organizations were putting profits before people. 7 Weeks Coffee was started to reverse this trend and live out Graham's calling as believers in the marketplace. As a values-based business, 7 Weeks Coffee has a simple and transparent mission. Donate 10%, a tithe, of every sale to pregnancy care centers across the nation. They are committed to earning your trust, not expecting it. So how do they do this? Leading with their values, showing the impact and providing the highest quality product. I am a Christian. I'm conservative. And 7 Weeks Coffee unapologetically supports pregnancy care centers across the nation. Please join us by letting your coffee serve a greater purpose. Now, let's pause for a second and take all this in. Now, this is not whether you like or dislike James Comey. This is about precedent. Never before in the U.S. history has a sitting or a former FBI director faced criminal indictment. Never. Even when you know there had to be a time where J. Edgar Hoover, in his lace panties and fishnet stockings under his suit pants, was sitting there lying his off to Congress, right? Now, the FBI has had its scandals. Hoover's excesses, Waco, Ruby Ridge, internal corruption cases, but to see the Bureau's top man facing a federal arraignment in Alexandria, Virginia, this is uncharted territory. And the symbolism could not be more explosive. At a time when half the country already think the FBI is weaponized against them, and the other half think that the DOJ is being used as a tool of the Trump's revenge, this indictment drops like a hammer on both narratives. Comey's defenders will say that this is political persecution. His critics, they'll say it's long overdue accountability. Both sides will yell. Everybody's going to be yelling today. Both sides will spin. You'll be dizzy. But the fact remains on October 9th, James Comey will walk into a federal court as a criminal defendant. Now, to understand how we got here, we're going to have to walk back nearly a decade. Let's start with 2016. Hillary Clinton's private email server had been under FBI investigation. Yes, she had a private email server. She was Secretary of State at the time. You and I, because we're not Secretary of State, could have a private email server. When you're dealing with classified documents, classified emails, you shouldn't have a private email server. You shouldn't. Hillary Clinton had one. The FBI was investigating. So on July 5th, 2016, James Comey walked to a podium at the FBI headquarters and gave one of the most unusual press conferences in modern history. He outlined in detail how Clinton and her staff handled classified information. He said it was extremely carelessly. He confirmed that the FBI found emails marked classified on her server. He essentially prosecuted the case publicly, and then in the same breath announced that the FBI would not recommend charges. That moment frankly changed everything. Clinton supporters blamed Comey for tanking her campaign. Trump supporters saw the decision as proof of a double standard. Then, in 2016, Comey sent Congress a letter saying the FBI was reopening the case because new emails were found on Anthony Weiner's laptop. Anthony Weiner's laptop. 11 days before the election. Now, that bombshell arguably reshaped the race. Hillary Clinton said that cost her the presidency. Fast forward, May 2017, Trump fires Comey. The official explanation was his handling of the Clinton investigation. But Trump later himself admitted in interviews that the Russian thing was on his mind. And just like that, Comey was no longer at the top. He was a political lightning rod. So what's going on behind the scenes? Crossfire Hurricane. The FBI's code name for the counterintelligence investigation into whether Trump's campaign colluded with Russia. Launched in July of 2016, it quickly became one of the most controversial investigations in FBI history. Leaks dripped into the media. Articles appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, citing sources familiar with the investigation. You always hear that, right? Trump and his allies accused Comey of allowing the FBI to become a leaky sieve, using the press to damage him politically. Comey, of course, denied that. He insisted the FBI was professional, that he didn't authorize anyone to serve as an anonymous source. Okay, and that brings us to the Senate Judiciary hearings in September of 2020. Senators pressed Comey, did you or anyone under you authorize leaks to the press? Comey's answer, no. That's the moment prosecutors now say cross the line into perjury and obstruction. Now, while this is going on, Trump never, ever let go of Comey. From the day of his firing in 2017, Trump blasted him as a liar and a leaker, disgraced. He accused Comey of treason, of trying to orchestrate a coup. He vowed that there would be accountability someday. Now, Comey, on his part, became a media figure. He wrote books, he gave speeches, he framed himself as a man who stood up to Trump. To Trump's base, he was a poster child for the deep state. To Trump's critics, he was the guy who pulled back the curtain on Trump's demand for loyalty. So for years, Trump publicly called for Comey to be charged. Nothing happened until Bill Barr's DOJ. Nothing happened under Merrick Garland's DOJ, but under Trump's return to power, and with Pam Bondi as Attorney General and Kash Patel at the FBI, the landscape has changed. Okay, so why the indictment in September of 2025? Here's the timeline that matters. In early 2025 of this year, Trump takes office again. The DOJ leadership shifts. Pam Bondi from Florida becomes the new Attorney General. New U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia takes charge. In mid-2025, reports surfaced that the grand juries are reviewing old testimony and records. Leaks suggest that Comey is a target. Yesterday, on September 25th, 2025, the indictment is filed. The optics are clear. This happened only after Trump regained the presidency and reshaped the Department of Justice leadership. That's why critics are calling it revenge justice. But here's the kicker. The indictment is not about what Comey did in 2016 or 17. It's about what he said in 2020. It's about testimony under oath to the Senate Judiciary Committee. That distinction matters. It means prosecutors think that they can prove a clean, narrow case without wading into the full swamp of Crossfire Hurricane. This is why the case could be strong and why it could also collapse. If the defense convinces a jury that Comey simply did not recall or misunderstood the question.